This is TNA Knockout Velvet Sky, and you're listening to another wrestling podcast. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, so you're going to go to the show next week?
Which show is that, Credo?
The Gun Show. But I guess it doesn't work since you can't see me on air.
And you don't have guns.
It's time for another wrestling podcast with your hosts, Steve Credo and Jonathan Benjamin.
All right. It is another wrestling podcast. This is episode 12. I am Steve Credo.
I am Jonathan Benjamin.
That's right, and we're another wrestling podcast. I mean, we're not the same old everyday podcast that you're listening to where these marks just talk about Raw or SmackDown or Impact or any of these shows, right, Jonathan? We're different.
We are very different. You never know what you're going to get with another wrestling podcast, and we pride ourselves on that. We try to find the most unique guests, and I think you have to look no further than today's episode to realize what we did for you fans out there today.
That's right, because we are joined in a little bit by none other than the Godfather of MMA. You know him as the world's most dangerous man. He is Ken Shamrock. He will be joining us in a little bit, and be sure to check out KenShamrock.com. They just launched recently, and it's a site filled with all of Ken Shamrock information, pictures, photos, things that are going on, merchandise, anything you can figure out about Ken Shamrock is on the site. But more importantly, they have an Easter egg hidden within the site, and if you find it, it takes you to a secret page of other videos and photos and other things. I'm still looking for it, Jonathan, so it's pretty interesting. If anything you're going to visit the site for is to find this Easter egg and to find out all these hidden gems of Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank Ken for coming on. I'm sure that it's going to be a great interview, and looking forward to getting some of these questions answered that we have.
And I want to give a shout out for an event we're going to be at, which is Wrestling Spectacular 3D, September 21st in Middletown, New York, Jonathan. It's a great chance to meet and greet some of your favorite superstars of yesterday and today. None other than Team 3D will be headlining it. Bully Ray and Devon, formerly known as the Dudley Boys, will be there. We have the beautiful people who will be in ring gear. No other place will you be able to meet the beautiful people but in their beautiful people ring attire, so to speak. There's tons of people added. You have Mr. Monday Night, the whole effing show. Rob Van Dam will be there. We have none other than formerly known as Jinder Mahal, Hall of Famer, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, SoCal Val. We have Ethan Carter III going to be appearing. One of my favorite tag teams, Crime Time, JTG and Shad will be there signing autographs. We have Yoshi Tatsu, who's going to be in the house, Gail Kim, Camacho, Road Warrior Animal, Val Venus, Big Van Vader, Hall of Famer Tony Atlas. Jonathan, can you believe all these stars that are going to be there? Bobby Lashley, Ezekiel Jackson, Tyler Rex, Earl Hebner, Sonny, Joey Styles, Axel Rotten, Gary Wolf, tons and tons of guys. But more importantly, Jonathan, do you know who another wrestling podcast is bringing to the show?
Well, none other than Joel Gertner.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The first appearance by Joel Gertner with another wrestling podcast. He'll be talking to us live at the show, which we will be broadcasting a live show from. So in case you can't make it, tune into anotherwrestlingpodcast.com. There will be a link on our site streaming a live show from the event. So be sure to check that out. This is exciting, Jonathan. Big news.
Big news coming from AWP Studios. That's why you always have to keep up with what we're doing on Another Wrestling Podcast. And the best way to do that is how would fans do that, Credo?
anotherwrestlingpodcast.com, Jonathan. Where else would you want to go to find all of our links about the greatness that is us? All right, joining us today is none other than the Godfather of MMA, the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, thanks for having me on.
Now, Ken, before we get right into it, I mean, few people may realize the hardships you've encountered as a child. You rose through adversity to become very successful. As a child, did you ever dream you'd achieve the success that you have today?
Well, as a child, I mean, especially when you living on the street and, living in a car and stealing food and getting those things, you really don't even think about the future. You basically think in the moment. And so even as I got caught and got put into placement and became a ward of the court, even then, more of my thought process was on a daily basis of what I needed right now. It wasn't until later in life, after I graduated from programs and turned my life around, that I started really thinking about, tomorrow and the next day and the future. So for me, it was really during those younger times, it was really just trying to take care of that moment.
A lot of people probably don't realize this either, but you actually started in pro wrestling prior to the MMA career you had. But even before that, you were fairly successful in all sorts of sports growing up. You were in football and baseball and also amateur wrestling. What made you decide at that point to go to professional wrestling?
Well, I played football, and because of my background and my upbringing I didn't have the education I needed to move into a university. So to play at that Division I level at football, I was good enough to do that, but I just couldn't pass the SAT scores to get into the universities because of my background and the education that I lacked growing up. So my path ran short of basically my athletic ability going anywhere. So I had to look at other venues and other avenues to really excel and be a part of whatever it is that I chose to do. It wasn't going to be sitting behind a desk. That's not what excited me. What really I wanted to do was compete and be in front of people and make people happy and cheer and scream and yell. So that's kind of what I was driven to. Whether it was in pro wrestling or whether it was in a boxing match, tough man contest, or whether it was in front of football playing, or whether it was fighting. Whatever it was, I just loved being in front of crowds, and I just thrived on it.
All right. Now, Ken, I read somewhere that, it was during your time in Japan that you first became interested in MMA. How did maybe your MMA training differ from that of pro wrestling training? I mean, was there a big difference between what you had to do for each?
Well, I would say pro wrestling is its challenge is managing your time, because it is a constant grind on the road from show to show, staying healthy and being able to perform every single night, day after day after day, getting the right food in, getting the right training in, getting the right sleep in, and being able to go out to perform the best way you can and staying healthy. Whereas fighting, you can fight, at the time I was fighting 8-9 times a year, sometimes 12 times a year, depending on if I had a fight in between Japan. So it really was a difference between managing time and time for training. Mm-hmm. When I was fighting the UFC and over in Japan, I would have 3 weeks to 4 weeks to prepare for a fight. Now you have almost 6 months to 4 months to prepare for a fight. So yeah, it was really about managing your time, and then the different types of training schedules that you had to be on for each of these events. So for sure, I think the biggest difference for either one of these things is time frames.
Right now, a huge name in professional wrestling is Brock Lesnar. Do you feel that you paved the way for superstars like Brock Lesnar in the WWE, since you were the first really successful MMA crossover?
Well, I mean, that's what people call it. I'm not sure, how everybody wants to say it, but there's always going to be somebody that does something first, and other people are going to follow behind and do that, and they're going to make it better. It's history. That's what it's called. in history, you either make it better or you make it worse. Of course, you don't want to make it worse, or it just doesn't exist or stay around. So, so I would like to say, I did start a lot of new things. For instance, the ankle lock. No one ever did that, and now there's several people that copy that at a very high level, people that are actually famous now that actually use that as a finishing move. So there's a lot of things I've done first. The Lions Den match, first guy to go from wrestling into MMA and MMA into wrestling. So there's a lot of things that I've done first, and even in the MMA world, a lot of things I've done there first. So I'd like to think that I was put in the right place at the right time, and I took advantage of my opportunities.
All right. Now, speaking of Brock Lesnar, now, Ken, do you think you would have been able to beat Brock in MMA or WWE? I mean, I think you could have, but I mean, I'm sure the fans out there want to know from your point of view.
Well, I think if you look at who I was before the injuries and before all that, I was a person that beat guys that were 60, 80 pounds bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I beat guys that were Olympic wrestlers, Olympic judo players, Olympic Greco-Roman guys, Antoine Kozlowski.
Yeah.
I beat guys that were at that Olympic level, and I beat them fairly easy. So I would like to think that my skill levels at that time and the strength that I possessed at that time, along with the conditioning that I had, which was second to none. I had better conditioning than anybody I ever went anything faced when I was healthy. I went 46 minutes straight with no time limit, and I went 36 minutes straight in the U.S. with no rest in between, no rounds. So my conditioning was definitely there, and my skill level, my strength was there to beat guys that were bigger, guys that may think that they were stronger. I was quicker and stronger. So, I think if you look at the matchup and you look at how I was when I was healthy and the strength that I had and the size and the quickness, Brock Lesnar doesn't stand a chance. But at the same time, in the same sentence, I believe that Brock Lesnar, if he would have been trained properly and brought in properly and been able to have been groomed properly, could have been the best heavyweight champion of all time. But I believe he was rushed. He fought guys he shouldn't have been fighting at that level at that point in time in his career. And he got pushed fast. So, but again, there's just an opinion, and you can agree with it or not.
All right.
So, Ken, I have often wondered this, especially, and I'm sure every MMA fighter or even pro wrestler would be different. But did you ever have any pre-fight rituals?
No, I really didn't believe in that. I did things that came to me, and it felt right, and it helped me prepare. But it was never anything that was the same thing over and over again.
All right. Ken, when you wrestled, do you think it was behind the scenes or backstage? Did you know guys in WWE, who you thought, wow, these guys could have probably made it in the UFC? I mean, is there anybody that comes to mind that you thought who's really tough?
Yeah, I thought Steve Blackman probably could have done something. And I think a lot of other guys, even The Undertaker, just other guys that I've seen in there, and there's many more that I believed that were athletes at one time before they got into pro wrestling. And pro wrestling was something they wanted to do, and they took that venture. But after being there for many years and doing that, you can't change what you've trained for over the years and years of doing that and then switch back over into doing something like the MMA. It takes a lot of training. And thank goodness for that Brock Lesnar had already been a wrestler and been training and being able to control and manipulate someone's body on the ground. That's what really gave him a lot of success, was being as big as he was and as strong as he was and being able to move very well on the ground for his size. I think that's what really helped him through that MMA circuit. But again, like I said, there's a lot of guys I thought had a lot of athletic ability, and that if they chose to and they wanted to sink the time and the effort into it, they could do it.
Coming into the WWE locker room, WWF then, did you have a hard time? Do you think that people didn't, trust you as much because you were coming in from this MMA world, or do you think that, you had a fairly easy time breaking into WWE?
Well, yes to both of them. I think I had a very easy time breaking in, and yes, I believe that they were cautious of me. And I can't blame them. I know if I had some guy coming in and I was going to give him my body. And I watched a few of my fights, and I'd be going like, well, maybe we better just like slow this guy down a little bit. Because you only have one body, and it's your moneymaker, and you got to protect it. So I understood going in that there would be a little bit of some doubt in a feeling out process, and I was okay with that. And so I thought that really it was the way that I entered the circuit and the way that I positioned myself, so that they understood that I realized that this was something new to me. I know I've done pro wrestling before. A lot of these guys don't know I've done it, but even if I did, not at this level. And so I understood that, and I wanted to know that I'm here to learn, and that I'm going to ask a lot of questions and make sure that everybody's comfortable with me. So, and I did that. So I think that really eased a lot of the doubt stuff. And then train with Bret Hart when I was up in Calgary. That helped out quite a bit too, because then people had known that I'd been up to train with Bret. Bret put a word in, saying that hey, he gets it. That really eased a lot of people's doubt.
Okay. Were you ever asked to do something in WWE that maybe you were uncomfortable with, or that you decided not to do?
Oh yeah, there was a few things. There was an angle with my sister, Ryan, who played my sister. They wanted me to do some sort of gimmick with that. I felt like, it just wasn't, I have children and different things like that. And I decided, that's just not going to be, even though it's entertainment in most people's eyes, but the young kids' age, they don't know that. And so I also had a son named Ryan too. And I didn't want people to really confuse and get things mixed up with what was going on in reality, as opposed to this entertainment that I was involved in. So I really had to turn that down. Another one was that Tough Man competition that they wanted to do. They wanted me to do that, and I said, I've spent a lot of time here trying to build up my trust with the guys that I'm going in the ring against and wrestling with, and that for me to enter into this event and go back to this style of fighting is only going against what I'm trying to get away from right now.
If you can go back to, WWE and UFC, I kind of have a two-part question with this. Just to go back, if you could have one more, UFC fight, who would you pick to fight and why? And the same goes with WWE. If you had one more match, who would it be against?
Well, and if you're talking about here and now, and not, years down.
Yeah, if to make it easier, I would say if you can go back to when you were at your prime before you left, who would you love to have fought before you left the company?
Oh, I would have liked to have fought Horace Gracie for that third rubber match. I just thought that was something that was unsettled, and I believe that it gives him too much ground for him to say the things he's saying now about the second fight. And I felt like if we could do the third one, then we just put a hush to it all. And that never happened. But, it is what it is. And for the pro wrestling, I thought I really would have liked to have been able to get in there and get a shot at that world title, at least get a run, make a plan at it. I never got that opportunity. So not really one individual in there, but just not being able to. I thought I did everything. I captured the King of the Ring, Intercontinental title, Tag Team title. I did everything to set up to get in place to work a program for the heavyweight belt, and I didn't get the chance.
All right.
So you had a really successful MMA career before going to UFC, where you obviously became one of the most recognizable names, not only in the business, but probably the entire world. What do you think about the popularity of UFC today?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, wow. I'm as the nickname has stuck with me now, as did the world's most dangerous man. I take it on, just pridefully, and people are calling me the Godfather, so I picked that name up and run with it, and so yeah, it's awesome to be a part of something that you've been involved with and you've helped push into the realm of being a popular event, and I have done that. I've been a part of something and helped create something that is going to be here forever, as far as I'm concerned. So, and it's also changed the outlook of what people look at as a combative sport. And I think it's been pretty much put to rest on which one is the best, and it is mixed martial arts.
All right. Now, Ken, this kind of goes back to the first question I had about, the training for UFC and training with, for wrestling. But, after you pretty much dominated the UFC, you returned to pro wrestling. Did you find it hard to work more of, I would say, like an entertainment-driven style versus your hard-hitting MMA style? I mean, did you find it, not training for it, but just actually, being in the match? Did you find it, which one was harder, or which, if you had to put them together?
Well, they're two different things, and I think the mindset is really what it comes down to. Well, when I went into pro wrestling, my mindset was to go in there and learn it and be the best that I can at it, be the best, one of the best that ever did it, and I really had that mindset to do that. So I wasn't thinking about, is this hard or is that hard? In fact, in everything I ever compete in, it's like I go into it with the mindset of just throwing myself into it and becoming a part of it, and then developing myself to be the best at it. And that's what I did with UFC. I did it with WWF or E at the time. I did it with TNA. I did it with Pancreas Organization. I've done it with Tough Mans. I did it with everything football. Everything I've been a part of, I've thrown myself into it. And once I'm in it, I become that thing, and I want to be the best at it or the best that ever played it. And so with that mindset, I don't think there's an idea of which one is the hardest, because in my mind, I'm going to achieve and be the best at it. So the hard part doesn't even enter into my mind. As far as the which one was harder for me to really learn or to get more involved with, was the WWE, because it's just so much more variables to it. Being a tough guy and walking the ring and just learning skills and fighting, it came pretty natural for me, and I seemed to just really roll through everybody, and it was really a really natural thing for me. But pro wrestling was a little bit different in that sense, where there was a lot of acting, a lot of character, a lot of setups, a lot of things that I had to hold back and learn. So it was definitely something that took me something to really have to think about and really apply myself to do right.
All right.
Now, one thing that you probably didn't have to deal with much in MMA was getting pelted in the head with chairs, and I'm sure this is probably a question you get asked a lot, or at least people want to know about it. But the chair shot you took from The Rock on Raw probably got you probably everybody at that point knew who Ken Shamrock was in the WWE at that moment. How hard was it to, do something like that? Whenever, like we said before, you're just, fighting with fists and kicks, and, what kind of mentality do you have to be in to take a shot like that?
Well, and again, like I said, there are things like the ankle lock and different submission holds that I did first there that other people are doing. And that face shot was one that I developed. That was the one that I brought to the table. I told The Rock, hit me in the face. And he looked at me, I was crazy. And I said, no, just do it. I said, I'll take care of myself. You just do it. And so he did it. And I took care of myself. And everybody just kind of blew up, and they thought it was like crazy and nuts. But in reality, it was a lot safer for me to see it coming than it was for somebody to hit me on top of the head or the back of the head, because I couldn't see it. So for me, it felt a lot better for me to take it in the face and be able to, control that where it was going to hit me, rather than it depend on somebody else to hit me in the back of the head or the top of the head, and them to do it the way they needed to do it. So I took control of the space, so I'll take care of the rest.
All right. Now, Ken, you enjoyed a lot of success working in the WWE with such guys as Owen Hart, British Bulldog, like we just talked about, The Rock, and even Shawn Michaels. Do you have maybe any funny memories or any stories, maybe even backstage stuff with working with these guys? Anything you could share with us?
When I got in there, I got to know all these guys, and everybody there was really good. They're just like anybody else, trying to make a living and trying to make it in this world. So I met a lot of great people during my journey with WWF and WWE, and I've been very blessed to be able to compete at such a level. So nothing but great things to say about the guys involved, and even the fans were tremendous.
All right.
Now, obviously you've kind of dominated both UFC and WWE. Have you talked with Dana White or Vince McMahon in the recent years just about ever coming back to do things, or?
Well, I mean, I have been in touch with both of them, Dana White and Vince, but just as communication. Not Vince so much, but Dana. Yeah, we have talked, and we put our differences aside and moved forward. There's nothing about coming back. Along with Vince, I have put out my feelers, and I've had people contact the office about maybe give me a shot at making that run at the title. One that has eluded me, and I thought I set myself up for it, and I thought that they'd set me up for a position to be able to make a run at the title and get a program to work in for the title. But, that just never happened, and I'm just not sure what happened. Maybe it was this screw job with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, because I know Bret had mentioned that if he was going to drop it, he wanted to drop it to me. And so I just don't know all the inner workings and the things that were going on with that situation. Never did flourish. So I definitely put out the feelers to come back and see if maybe there was some way we could get me back in there and see if there's an angle in there somewhere for me to work a shot, maybe at the title again. But I've never heard anything back. No one's ever given me a no or a yes. So it's just up there in the air. But I'm assuming it's probably a no.
All right. Now, Ken, your website just recently debuted, KenShamrock.com, for all the listeners out there to go check it out. Is there anything you want to tell the fans of what they should be checking out on the site or what they could expect?
Well, first of all, the site is tremendous. I mean, it's really easy to get into. There's a lot on there. There's a lot of information, a lot about my history, my background, my professional career, things that I have been involved with. There's also 2 sets of shirts on there that you can actually purchase. We all have a shirt line out now, and actually it's pretty cool because one of them says Godfather, and then it has an instruction on what the Godfather means, and then it has me one on there with the championship belt. So there's a lot on there. There's also a spot on there where it's kind of a new thing I'm into, but I believe it's something that a lot of people can actually get into it. It's the stock and trade. Take a lot of tutorial classes, different things with underlying assets, trading, the trade market, analyzing the trade markets, investing. Different things of that nature, and so those are things that I'm involved with now. And so, if you wanted to go on to that, we have it's called Ken Shamrock and Grok Trading. There's a site on there where you can push on there and learn about the S&P markets, the Russell 2000, the index, NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, all the things that I'm actually learning right now: options, call options, margins, short selling, long selling, bear markets, bearish markets. So expiration dates, call options, buying and calling. There's just so much on there that I'm learning right now. And we're actually going to open that up for people that want to get involved and learn how to make money on trading and be able to invest in this, be able to learn how to make money back on their investments. And so check that out too, because I think they'll really like that, and I'm involved with it. Something we could do side by side. There's also on the page there, which is I think a lot of people are finding interesting, is we have an Easter egg on there, which is a spot you would click on, and it would actually put you onto a secret page, which is something that you have to find. We've had one person so far find the Easter egg.
I'm trying. I've been trying every day. I'm clicking everything.
It's there, man. It's
all
there.
Right.
So one guy's found it, and he'll put you on a secret page. You get to go in and check out some more stuff. But the site's very fun. It's very easy to use, and it is a way for me, which is something that I feel is important, a way for me to stay in contact with my fans. Being able to show the appreciation over the years of the support they've given me. So I want this site to be as fun as possible. We're adding I believe it's next week or the week after that, we're in the process of adding maybe a podcast on there where we could do different types of interviews. We could talk to people. So there's more of a intervention between me and the fans also on this site. So we're looking forward to that too, to make it a lot more fan friendly and fan friendly. So we're looking for that, man. It's gonna be fun. Check out the site. It's KenShamrock.com. It's also got my Twitter hooked to it, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media stuff that you need on there. We've got all that hooked up there. So looking forward to people going on there at KenShamrock.com. Come on aboard, man, and enjoy the site, man, and let's have some fun.
All right, awesome. And Ken, one last question before we go. If you could give any piece of advice to all your fans across the world, who are probably up-and-coming wrestlers or MMA, fighters or anybody like that, if there's one thing you could probably let all of them know, getting into the business, is there anything you would just love to let them know right now?
Yeah, and I think that this, and anybody that's been through any professional athlete would I would hope would tell you this. First of all, make sure you get your education. And second, and most of all, make sure that you have something to fall back on, because not everybody is going to go through and get what they think they're going to get out of being a professional athlete. You could get hurt. You couldn't achieve the things that you thought you might have been able to achieve just by not getting the opportunities. So not because you're not good enough, because obviously there's a lot of guys out there who were good enough. They just didn't get the opportunity or they got hurt. So make sure you have something to fall back on, that if things go south on you, that you're not going to be left out hanging to dry it and you don't have anywhere else to go.
Sure, definitely. Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, hey, listen, I appreciate it, man. And also, too, again, love to see you guys hook up on KenShamrock.com. Check out that grok trading, because that's something I'm doing. We can do it side by side. Love to see you guys, and God bless.
Wow. Credo, that was one of the best interviews we've done so far. The world's most dangerous man. I'd like to thank him again for coming on the show. And like we said, be sure to check out www.KenShamrock.com for all your Ken Shamrock needs. Just to talk to him, he was a really integral part of the Attitude Era. I really liked how he brought some realism to professional wrestling. And probably one of my favorite things about Ken Shamrock was that finishing move that he had. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Credo?
I remember.
The ankle lock. I mean, that was just one of those things that I used to slap that bad boy on my brother anytime that we would start fighting. And the thing is that it hurts. It's a finisher that really gets the job done.
Yeah, and I can't. Speaking of finishing moves, I mean, this is probably one of the first finishing moves that I could remember that actually looked like, to me, in the WWE at least, not watching anything else, that, wow, this is real. You know what I mean? Now, don't get me wrong, but, I love the Bret Hart, the sharpshooter. We can get into that later, but I mean, out of all these finishing moves and submission holds, this was the first one I think I've seen by a wrestler come in, do the move, and then I'd be like, oh my gosh, he's gonna break the freaking guy's leg. You know what I mean? So it was scary to watch in first, because we knew he was coming in from the UFC, and so we knew he was the world's most dangerous man. So he definitely needed this finishing move to complete that character, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's one of those finishing maneuvers that stood the test of time. Obviously, after Ken Shamrock got a hold of it, another great wrestler, Kurt Angle, got it and ran with it. He had it for quite a while. He still uses it. And then now, currently, we have Jack Swagger. And, that maneuver is always going to be one that definitely makes you think that, I know a lot of wrestling's staged or scripted or whatever, but that's really got to hurt. So, but when we start talking about finishing maneuvers, really, if you look back at the spectacle that is pro wrestling, it really had humble beginnings. I mean, you started out with these matches that were kind of predetermined, and two guys were kind of, just throwing fisticuffs at each other, but they needed something to kind of separate themselves from all the other guys. So you had guys that would throw a guy in, let's say, a sleeper hold. And back in the day, that had to be just amazing to people, because if you think about just like a fight, like I'm going to fight this guy, like it would just go, you would punch and kick until somebody was laying on the ground. So I can only imagine what these first finishers were like to be in the crowd whenever you saw someone slap like a sleeper hold on somebody. That had to be just amazing.
Well, even speaking about some finishing moves that were back in the day, I mean, if we could talk about some briefly, even the very basic generic uh, leg drop by Hulk Hogan. I mean, it was a leg drop, and that was it, man. That was his finisher. Something as simple as that, that was the end. I can't imagine the mindset back then compared to what we're used to today as finishing moves. How the leg drop was that of a finishing move. Like that was the end all be all for Hulk Hogan, and as soon as he hit that, that was it. That was the end, right?
Yeah, if you look at, like I said, if you look at some of the more, humble maneuvers, some people had the heart punch, which was just instead of punching him in the head, you're gonna punch him in the chest, and then it's gonna stop their heart, and then you're gonna win the match. The Von Erichs used to use the claw. I mean, it's been resurrected a few times, but that, like, some of these moves seem seemingly harmless. But in the in the eyes of a fan, whenever someone slapped that claw on, you were crushing their skull, and it's amazing how the evolution of the finishing maneuver has happened. Basically, I want to say in our lifetime, really, the casual fan that started watching wrestling in the 80s to now really have seen this this whole different change in all the different finishing maneuvers. Do you have any that you can think of offhand that are your some of your favorite finishing maneuvers?
People are gonna get sick of me saying this, Jonathan.
Oh my God, Bret
What am I gonna
Hart.
say? I know. Come on.
Don't call me a Hart guy, but I really like Bret Hart.
What can I say? I love the sharpshooter, Jonathan, and I actually just listened to a recent podcast, which I'm not going to give the name away because you're supposed to be listening to another wrestling podcast. But Sting was on it talking about what's the difference between the sharpshooter and the Scorpion Deathlock, and his answer was, Bret Hart does the sharpshooter and I do the Scorpion Deathlock. Same maneuver, different name. We'll actually get into that maybe too, of who had the same maneuver but a different name. But that's one of my favorites. Screw the Scorpion Deathlock. It's the sharp shooter, and that's one of my favorite submission moves that I've always loved. It's basic. It still looks good today when used right. I know Natalia uses it a lot, and I don't know. That's one of my favorites. What about you?
I definitely. I'm telling you, I've got a lot of wrestling maneuvers that I'm a huge fan of. Probably the top two on my list are the Rude Awakening, because like you, I have a favorite, and he's Ravishing Rick Rude. The neck breaker to me just really, like the name neck breaker, like it just bam, like it has that pop to it, and you know that when someone does it, it could really break their neck. So that was always a big one for me. And then also the coast to coast, when Shane McMahon would jump from ring post to ring post, and usually a trash can would be involved or something. That to me was just a huge thing, and it just took your breath away. Like whenever you're watching it, you were like, is he going to make it? Is the guy going to get hurt? Is he going to like land on somebody and break their leg? Like you just never knew. So that was definitely something that I was looking forward to whenever I was a fan.
Rob Van Dam did something similar to that, though. I forget what it was called, but I remember he used to do something like that, where he'd go coast to coast too in ECW. I don't remember the name.
The Van Terminator.
Was that it?
Yes.
So I mean, even though both of those guys, you can't take one away from the other. Both of them doing that same kind of maneuver was great to see, and it was different. I think that's what made it stand out, is that nobody else was doing it. Because I mean, let's talk a little bit about back then. I mean, like we said, we had a leg drop. Hell, even Jerry Lawler has the pile driver, which actually ended up being one heck of a move that CM Punk used on John Cena a few years ago on Raw, and I know he got some grief over that because they stay away from those kind of moves so they don't hurt the guy's neck and whatnot. But even like seeing that used and hasn't been used in forever, I thought was awesome. And I mean, it's a basic move, but it's a good finisher still to this day.
Yeah, and speaking of like really good finishers, I don't know how many of you are aware of this story, but I recently watched a documentary on Jake the Snake Roberts, and I thought that this was fascinating because we just kind of take for granted today that all these finishing maneuvers have always been with us. But the DDT, a fairly seemingly, just basic finishing maneuver, was created by accident. Jake Roberts had a guy, his head, around his waist, and he went to move, and the guy tripped on Jake's feet, and then they both went down, and thus making it look like the DDT. Now, Jake said that he was the face or the good guy at the time, so he jumped up and acted like, oh, that wasn't me, I didn't trip, it was him, or whatever. But everybody just was sitting there silent, and the guy had the wherewithal to just lay there. And from that moment, the DDT was born. Now, if you look back in the history of professional wrestling, that maneuver is one that just, once it's hit, everybody just, it still to this day looks painful. And if you remember the infamous DDT when Jake Roberts hit it on Ricky Steamboat, and he hit it on the concrete, and it legitimately knocked him out. So it's one of those moves that, if not done right, it's definitely going to have a bad consequence.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a funny story too. And any of you guys listening out there, or girls, if you had a favorite finishing maneuver, or if you know a story how one was created, let us know. Tweet us at A Wrestling Pod. That's A Wrestling POD. We'd love to hear what you guys think is your favorite finishing move too. And even just to name a few more old school ones, I think one that I really love that I don't think anybody even uses to this day, is the Razor's Edge. And now, only certain guys can do this, because Scott Hall, he was a big guy back then, and it only works, I think, on really big guys, because the way they have to raise you up over the back, and he has to execute it right, or else he's dropping you on your head. And I think at a local independent show, we actually saw his son Cody. Is it his son Cody, or what's his name?
Cody.
Yeah, he messed it up, and now his son's a big guy too, but I don't think he's as strong as what his dad was back in the day, and he messed it up pretty bad. But what do you think about this? Is there any other old school finishing moves that you just love that could actually go toe to toe with it today?
I like how you brought up the pile driver. I think it's one of those maneuvers that can be done several different ways. And it was actually outlawed. If you look back when Jerry Lawler was doing the pile driver, when he did it on Andy Kaufman, they literally would stop the match, and it was a disqualification because it was deemed such a just terrible maneuver. So I think that there's been several other moves that have been banned. I know that really the only person that you see doing the tombstone is The Undertaker, because they're afraid. Also, Hurricane Helms, a former guest on the show, also used to do a move called the Vertebreaker. Yeah. I would suggest looking it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it, and it was actually banned as well. So there's just so many finishing maneuvers out there. Now, what are your thoughts on some of today's finishing maneuvers? So you're watching WWE, and you flip on Monday Night Raw, and you see Randy Orton versus Sheamus, for example. So right there you have the RKO. And you also have the brogue, the big boot. What are your? Those are two seemingly simple moves, but they're very effective on in pro wrestling.
Well, I'd say right there and then, Randy Orton has the best one, because it's the diamond cutter meets the stunner. You know what I mean? That's a great finishing move if done correctly. He does it right all the time. The way he does it, I think, is great, and the way the guys sell it is how they should sell it. Now, when it comes to Sheamus and his big boot, or if you even talk about big shows where his knockout punch, in pro wrestling, I am sick of those kind of finishing maneuvers. I don't want to see a knockout kick unless it's a spinning, a kick to the head or something, but just a big boot. I think a bigger guy, the only big guy that could do a big boot that I loved was Kevin Nash, just because he's 7 freaking feet tall and it looks good. When Sheamus does it, it's I'm trying to do a karate kick to your head, and it doesn't have the same impact as it would if Kevin Nash was doing it, in my book. But if you put those two guys together, I love the RKO because, like I said, it's like the diamond cutter, like the Stone Cold Stunner. That's a great finishing move. The brogue kick, they could give him something else.
Yeah, I think that you've got lots of awesome moves that are being done today. I love the curb stomp that Seth Rollins has currently. I am a huge fan of Daniel Bryan's Yes Lock. Obviously, Triple H's pedigree is always a crowd pleaser. But, when you watch the product today, you watch WWE, even TNA, Ring of Honor, once a person really hits a finishing maneuver, like the attitude adjustment, the F5, whatever you want to call it, the match, you can tell, is almost over, pretty much. There's some rare moments when, someone will kick out of a finisher, but it's very rare. If you go to any independent show around the area today, what do you see whenever you see a match, Credo?
Well, the thing is, I don't want to come down on any wrestlers because I'm not a wrestler and I don't know what it's like to be in a match. But a lot of these guys today, I mean, they make them into like spot fests. You know what I mean? Where guys will take a finishing move that either we see on TV or are known, and they'll do like 50 of them, and the guy still kicks out. And it's like these certain moves aren't supposed to be used as just any other regular move. You know what I mean? Like you can't just keep super kicking somebody and expect that the guy's not going to kick out, or I don't know. But I think these guys are overdoing it with their finishing moves sometimes at independent shows. And I personally would love if they brought back that realism to where you hit a super kick on a guy and then he's done. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to keep doing 15 of them to do anything special, or stuff like that. Don't make it into a spot fest. I mean, have great spots during your match, but save the finishing moves for, wait for it, I don't want to be crazy here, the finish. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. And I think that you probably brought up the most used maneuver in all of wrestling is the super kick. And if let's say Shawn Michaels went against Ric Flair, he put down Ric Flair, but yet two guys in your local VFW get hit with 37 super kicks, but yet they're both still going strong. I think that is kind of a problem with today's independent wrestling. Now, don't get me wrong, I love independent wrestling, but it's just one of those things that you've got to really pace yourself and have respect for those. Have respect for those who came before you, and notice that, hey, I can't use this maneuver. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a well-placed headlock, or pace yourself during the match. And trust me, I get caught up in the emotion. I watch a lot of these independent matches, and I'm thinking, wow, these are great matches. But at the end of it, I'm thinking, did I really need to see 37 RKOs, 14 super kicks, 2 attitude adjustments, and a moonsault from the referee? I just don't need to see it.
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, like, I guarantee if it's like at a bigger show, at someone's like big show of the year, I get it. You know what I mean? But like, if you're going to every show and you see this happening, like at every show, it's like you guys got to come up with a new formula or something. But that's just, I mean, our 2 cents on it. Tell us what you think, right, Jonathan?
Absolutely. You can please be. We want this to be interactive. So if you're on Facebook.com/Another Wrestling Podcast and you want to tell us what you think about your favorite finishing maneuver, feel free to do that.
Yeah, and we want to hear from you. So it's Facebook.com/Another Wrestling Podcast.
So, Credo, before we really wrap this up, I've got 2 more questions for you. If you were if you had your own professional wrestling school, or if you had your own professional wrestling promotion, and you got to pick what people were going to be doing, whether it be submissions, just other generic finishers, or top rope finishers, what do you think you would want your wrestlers to do more? I mean, obviously you'd want there to be a mix, but like, what are you a fan of the most? Do you like the submissions? Do you like the moonsaults, or do you like things like the RKO?
First off, which we don't see a lot today, which brings us back to wrestling, is the old school grappling. Daniel Bryan does it a lot, and unfortunately he's on the shelf right now, but even going back to like wrestlers like Dean Malenko, William Regal, guys like that were, old school wrestling grapple guys, and you don't really see that much more of that. You don't see guys put other guys in holds that, take some time, you know what I mean? You just see a lot of rushing around the ring, and I really miss the grappling style all in all. So I would definitely have that as a big part of it. And then, like you said today, a lot of these places, are spot fests. So to slow it down, though, I would definitely go back to a lot of like RKOs, stunner kind of finishes, super kicks. But I would save like a top rope finisher, like 1 out of the whole show. You don't need 20 of them. You don't need all these, whatever happening. I would just save either 1 like frog splash or 1 moonsault or something from the top rope, something that's big. One of my favorite top rope finishers is the Swanton Bomb. I no matter what your thoughts are on Jeff Hardy, still to this day, no matter how many times I watch it, I think he has one of the best top rope finishers. So, like I said, I would split it out and I would save, like the really high stuff, like for once in a while kind of thing,
Absolutely. Now, I've got a little game plan for you.
All right, game plan. What are we doing?
Because this is a finishing maneuver, conversation, I'm going to ask you to tell me if the name that I'm giving you is a pro wrestling finishing maneuver or the name of a band.
All right.
And it may sound simple, but you'll be surprised whenever I get into this. So, the first one that I'm going to ask is Dream Street.
Dream Street, man, I feel like it's like a Dusty Rove move or something like that. I'm going to have to go with wrestling move or wrestling finisher.
It is, but it is a Ted DiBiase Jr., Dream Street.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I was thinking of like the Dream, the American Dream. Never mind. All right.
Okay. Okay. First, 1-1. How about Spinal Tap?
Oh, band, baby.
It is a band. It would work as either, though. That's the point of this whole thing.
That is. Yeah, true.
Okay, how about, let's see here, French Kiss?
It sounds like a cover band for Kiss in France, so I'm going to have to go with band.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Maurice's finishing maneuver.
Oh, Maurice's... man, I would love to, well...
I know what you're going for here. Okay. So let's see here. How about, cattle decapitation?
Oh, Daniel Bryan, that's a finisher.
That is cattle mutilation.
Oh, you tricked me. It was one of those things that I had to think about.
Cattle decapitation is a band from San Diego.
Oh,
San Diego.
Man, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking never mind. You got me.
We're going to do two more here. Let's see.
Right.
I want to really get you. Let's see here. I'm going to say, how about Wasteland?
Oh, man. I know it's a finishing move, but you might be tricking me in that it's a band also. Wasteland has to be one of the top 2 worst finishers ever by Wade Barrett. It's his finishing move, one of his finishing moves, but it's one of the worst finishing moves ever, is what I'm trying to say.
No, okay, so you got that right. It is Wade Barrett's finishing maneuver. And last but not least, I'm going to ask you if you have heard this and if it is a band or a finishing maneuver, and that is Machine Gun Fellatio.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to say band because I don't think I've ever experienced that.
You are correct, but I would like to see someone come up to WWE and have a finishing maneuver called the Machine Gun Fellatio.
Hey, it's anything can happen in wrestling.
Absolutely, and this is just what we do on Another Wrestling Podcast. We like to have fun, and here's some things that we'd like to tell you, just briefly here. If you are out and about in the Northeast, we have a couple shows that we'll probably be at soon that you should definitely check out. Northeast Wrestling is putting on a show at the North Haven Fair, Sunday, September 7th at 5 p.m. The best thing about this show is it's a free show if you have admission to the fair. So
awesome.
If you come out, you'll get to see people like Velvet Sky, Bull Dread, Short Sleeve Samson, Ron Zombie, new Northeast Wrestling Champion Matt Taven, and many others. So come check us out. We'll be there. And Credo, I think you have another one that's coming up for us.
That's right. September 19th, Airborne, presented by Northeast Wrestling. It'll be at the Waterbury PAL building at 8 p.m. sharp. We have none other than WWE former superstar Evan Bourne will be in the house, as well as the new Northeast Wrestling champion Matt Taven, Ring of Honor star Mike Bennett, and former Northeast Wrestling champion Brian Anthony will all be in attendance. Make sure you guys don't miss that show, Airborne. All right, Jonathan. Well, I think that's another wrap for another show. What do you think?
Yeah, number 12 is in the books, as they say.
It is. And guys, if you're listening, anotherwrestlingpodcast.com. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're taking over the media universe, right, Jonathan?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, guys. Till next time, this has been
Another Wrestling Podcast.